Hello, my name is Carl Surrey and this is a video tutorial for two Facebook groups, fans of Serif software and the Affinity Designer and Photo group. This video is primarily aimed at beginners to Affinity Photo and photo editing in general. Now it is to make a composite picture, and a composite picture is a finished image that is made up of various other images. Like this one here, that's what we're sort of aiming for, which is made up of the sky, Milky Way sky, the tree and the grass is another image, the deer is another image, the cabin is an image, and the picture of these two girls pointing at the sky. This was all made up from these pictures, which I got from Pixabay.com. You can use your own pictures, but these are the ones that I'm going to be using. And this is an adaptation of a Photoshop tutorial which I had on one of my magazines. And I will freely admit that making composite pictures is not something I'm necessarily that good at, which is why I would class myself as a beginner at this sort of topic. I know there'll be some purists out there that will hate what I've done. Especially like the house, it doesn't really blend that well into the background and you don't get the light coming from the windows, and there'll be other issues which they will probably hate. But it is, like I said, aimed at beginners to give them an idea of what they can do and some of the techniques they can do to do these things. So let us get on with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the tree image, which has got a nice blank background which I can get rid of. Not background, sky, sorry. First thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to rename this. You don't have to rename yours, it's just so I can keep an idea of which layer is which. Right, so I've opened the tree image and I've renamed that. Next I'm going to come to the sky image. Now I'm going to just slightly alter the colouring of this. It's a bit sort of light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a levels adjustment, and I'm just going to move the gamma slider to the right. Just to make it slightly darker, and then I'm going to merge that in so it's all part of the same background. I'm then going to right click on that layer and click on copy, or you could just use Ctrl and C. I'm then going to come back to my tree image and I'm going to paste in that sky. I'm going to come to the move tool and then I'm going to hold down the control key and click and drag this bottom right corner to resize it, get it roughly where I want it, and then move it so it fills the screen, the image. I'm then going to rename this as sky. And then I'm going to click and drag this layer to the bottom so that it is now behind the sky. The tree, I mean. So I'm now going to click and highlight the tree layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the tree and the grass and lose the sky. Now in the original Photoshop tutorial they just changed blending mode. If I remember off the top of my head, I think it was hard light, yeah, like that. But it changed the colour of the background, which I personally didn't like. Whether hard light works differently in Affinity Photo than it does in Photoshop, I don't really know, but I didn't like the fact that it changed the colour. I mean, it's quite a nice change, but didn't really suit the nighttime image I was after. So I had to do this a different way by selecting the tree and the foreground. Now to do this, I'm going to use channels. The channels tab is down here. You've got Navigator, Transform, History, and click on Channels. Now what I'm going to do here, you can click on the various channels to see which one gives you the best, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, the difference between black and white, I can't remember what the right phrase is off the top of my head, which is, in this case, is the blue composite channel. Let me just turn them all back on again. So if I right click on the blue composite channel, I can load to pixel selection. So that will select all this area here and in between the leaves and what have you, which is what I'm after. It has also selected some areas down here. You may be able to just see them on the grass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the selection brush tool and I'm going to select subtract, and then we change the brush size. I'm just going to paint over this grass area to lose any of those stray selections. I think that's got it all. So what I want to do now is to actually invert this selection, so because at the moment it's currently selecting the sky, but I want it to select the tree and the grass and not the sky. So if I come to select and down to invert pixel selection, or you can do Ctrl, Shift and I. Hopefully you can now see that this dotted line is now going around the grass, the tree and not the sky. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to press Ctrl and J, and that will duplicate just the selection. If I turn off the background, this tree layer here, if I turn that off, as you can see, we've now lost the sky area. So I'll press Ctrl and D to deselect, or you could have gone to select and then deselect, but Ctrl and D is probably quicker. So there we have our tree and landscape cut out, and we now have the sky looking normal in the background. You could delete this tree layer now if you wanted to, but I'll just leave it there, but turned off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a levels adjustment to this layer. So you can do adjustments either from the adjustments tab, or you can do it from up here from one of the menus, but I prefer to use this black and white circle and just select levels. And then I'm going to change before I actually make any changes, I'm going to click and drag this layer down until you get this blue line that only sort of comes up to the icon of the tree layer. If I come down a little bit further, if it goes all the way across, it will just be a new layer below the one I want to put it into. If it is only coming part of the way over, it will now be placed into and grouped with the layer that I want it to affect. So it's now only affecting this tree layer. So now the alterations that you can make now is really up to you, what suits your personal taste. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the gamma slider to the right to about 1.7 something or other, 1.714, that will do. And then I'm going to move the black slider, and you could go all the way, sort of make it a complete shadow, but I just want to leave a sort of hint of colour. So I'm going to come back to about 60, 65, 64%. There we go. So we just got a slight hint of the green. So hopefully, like the moonlight or what have you is allowing some lighting up of the grass in the foreground. So next I just want to maybe just tinker with the sky layer slightly, and I'm going to add a HSL adjustment to this. Now all the adjustments, you can just click on this black and white circle here. You could also do it from the adjustments tab, but I personally like to keep an eye on the layers rather than the adjustments. So I'll just click on HSL, and I'm going to just boost some of the colours in this background here. I'm going to have about 40%, add a bit of extra colour to the sky, but then just drop back the luminosity slightly. I'll go to about minus 30, 31. So that layer is now just affecting the sky and not the tree layer that is above it. Let me just click and highlight this top layer. I'll close the group. So moving on to the next item, which is the deers. Now the deer image, I picked this one because I wouldn't have to do any selecting and cutting out of this because it was on a white background. But if you have got a picture that you need to cut out, I will look at that a bit later when we do the picture of the girls, but I'm just going to copy and paste this one in as it is. And so I'll just right click on this, come to copy, come back to our image here and edit and paste. Now first thing I'm going to do is rename this. So that's now a deer layer, and what I'm going to do is add a threshold adjustment, which is there, and like before I'm going to click and drag this down and put it only into the deer layer, so it's only affecting this layer here. And then going to just move the slider for the threshold over until there is only the outline of the deer showing, which is virtually 100%. If you go to 100%, it will just go all black, but you just need to sort of come back to 98, 97%. So I can close that. I'll then come to the move tool, and I'm going to put it roughly where I want it, and now we just have to resize this. So I will hold down the control key and click and drag one of the corners to resize this down, get it roughly where I want it. Now I just need to change the blend mode of this to multiply, which will get rid of the white background, so all you can see is the deer. So hopefully you can see that there. You just want to get it in proportion to what size, the tree, for example. This is your reference point as to what size other items will be. So you can move it to wherever you want. And if you want more than one deer, you could just duplicate this. So I'll right click this and duplicate it, and then I'll come to the arrange menu and flip horizontally, and then I can add a second deer and maybe resize this one slightly and put this a bit further back like that. So we now have two deer in the background. In fact, let me just also rotate that one slightly. It looks like it's standing. There we go, I think that's better. So now we've got the sky, the tree and the deer. We now want to move on to the cabin. So let me get to the cabin, which is called Norway in Pixabay. Now I am going to select this, but it only really needs to be a fairly rough selection, because we only really want the outline of the hut, not that worried about specific details. So over here in the rectangular marquee tool menu, one of the options is freehand selection tool. And once you have that, you have these various options along the top here, and I'm going to go for the polygonal I should say option. So then it's just a case of you click for your start position, move to your next position, click again, and then just continue to go round. So I'll click there. Like I said, I'm not being too precise. If you do this slow and steady, it shouldn't be a problem. Sometimes if you go too quick with this tool, it will think you have finished and will complete the selection sort of for you, which can be slightly annoying. Almost there. And when you get back to the start position, you just put it over the start position, double click, and it will make this selection area for you. So now all I want to do is press Ctrl and J, and if I turn off the background, as you can see, I now have just the cabin selected. So I'll press Ctrl and D. Well, in fact, I'll do it from this way. I'll do it from the select menu and come to deselect, but you could do Ctrl and D. So that is now no longer selected, but I can right click this layer, copy, come back to our composite image, and then edit and paste. So now it's just a case of resizing and repositioning. So again, I will hold down the Control key and click on one of the corners to resize it. Again, you've got to think about the size between the tree and the house, whether you want the cabin to be bigger than the tree or smaller than the tree, or the same height as the tree. I'm going to just slightly increase the size of that, and I'm going to leave it about there, I think. So I'm going to rename this layer cabin. So once we had that done, before I go any further, I'm going to add a new pixel layer above this cabin layer, and to do that you've got this square between the remove layer and group layer icons, which is add pixel layer. So this will add a blank pixel layer at the top of the stack, and what we're going to do here is we're going to paint some yellowy orange colour into the windows while we can see where the windows are. So I'm just going to come to the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to pick an orangey, probably not too yellow. Let's go with, I'm only doing this randomly, but the colour I've selected is 255 on the red, 202 on the green, and 34 on the blue. Let me just zoom in. Let's change the hardness of this brush and the size. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be 100% precise with this, but the more careful you are, the easier it might be at the end. Let me just grab this bit here. I think there's a window up here somewhere. Right, just reduce the size a bit. Right, so I'm going to press Ctrl and 0 just to zoom out again. So as you can see, I've got all the windows coloured in. And what I'm going to do with that now is I'm going to just hide it for now. I don't need it at the moment, but I've done that ready for preparation for the next part. I'm going to click and highlight the cabin image layer that is below, and again I'm going to use the threshold option. So I'm going to come to adjustments, threshold, and like before I'm going to click and drag this into the cabin layer, so it will only be affecting the cabin. So I will move the slider to the right, and I'm going to take it so it loses all colour and it is just black. So I now have that cabin group there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this group. So I right click and come to duplicate. So I now have two versions of this cabin group, and I'm going to highlight the layer with the windows on. Let me rename that windows, and I'm going to click and drag this in between, so it's not part of either group, but it will be in between these two cabin groups. Drag this down, and as you can see, as the blue line comes all the way across, that will now be a separate layer between these two groups. I will now turn this layer back on, and I will highlight the top cabin group, and I will double click on the threshold icon to bring up the adjustment again, and I'm just going to bring this back to about 50% mark, so you can see the windows again. And then I'm going to highlight the group layer, and I'm going to change the blending mode of this down to subtract. so we get the windows now coloured, and you get a bit of the window frame included. So basically that is the cabin finished. What I will do is I will hold down the control key and click and highlight all of those various layers that make up the cabin, and then right click and group. So now all of those layers that make up that cabin image are now in one group. And like I said before, if somebody who is better at doing composites than I am could probably add extra light around the grass here to show the light coming from the windows. But at this present moment in time, that is a bit beyond my capabilities, so I'm not even going to attempt it. Now, as those are all grouped, if you wanted to, you could come to the move tool, resize everything, move everything however you want, because it is now all one group. They should all stay together, but I'm quite happy where that is at the moment. So next we want the image of the two girls, so we come to this image here. Now this time I am going to have to select them because I want to get rid of the background, and the easiest way, the quickest way to do this is with the selection brush tool, and it's on subtract from the previous time, so I'm going to come to add, make sure that is clicked, and then I'm just going to click on various parts of this image, and then when I need to reduce the size of the brush, it's just her legs. I don't have to be 100% precise with this because we're only using an outline shadow. But as you can see, I have selected some areas which I need to just remove, so I'll now come to the subtract option, and I'll just bring this selection a bit better down. Alright, I think there's a bit between the hair and what have you here. I think that's a good enough selection for what I need. So like before, I'm going to press Ctrl and J to duplicate that. So if I turn off this layer now, I have a very rough, and I do admit it is very rough, but for the purposes of what I'm using it for, it is adequate. So first of all, I will deselect that area. I will right click this top layer, copy, come back to a composite image, which is this one here, losing track of which image I've got open, and then edit and paste in the image of these girls. Again, I will hold down the control key and resize this. Starting to slow down slightly here because of all the various images and layers I have open. And then it's just a case of finding a size and a position that you like. Now obviously they need to be a lot smaller. You don't want them to be bigger than the house. Right, I can always resize them in a little bit let's first of all rename this to girls, and I'm going to again add a threshold adjustment to this, and like before I'm going to click and drag this threshold so it is part of the girls layer and only affecting that layer, and then move the slider pretty much all the way over. So you can then tinker with the positioning. Yeah, so that would do, I think. So basically we now have what would be the completed composite image of a nighttime scene with a cabin, some people looking at the sky, and a couple of deer. Not a brilliant composite picture, I will grant you, but it is a good way of learning some new ideas and also learning a bit about composing, which has helped me to learn a bit more, and so hopefully it will help you. So what you'd now need to do would be to either save it, if you go File and Save As. If you use the Save As option, it will save everything. It will save all the layers as they are, so you can come back and re-edit them. But it won't save it in a format that you can share with others as such. What you need to do for that is come to Export, and then you can save it in whichever format you want. Most people would be using JPEGs, but you could use PNGs or GIFs, but JPEG is the most commonly used one. And then sort of save it 100% quality, and then just click on Export to save it. Now if you wanted to make some slight alterations, I mean, especially once you've done Save As and you've saved everything as it is, you could then start tinkering with some of the options. Say for example, where's the cabin group? Say for example this threshold option here, if I turn that off from the first cabin option here, so you've got some of the cabin starting to re-show. So you could come to the upper cabin layer, click on the threshold icon, and then you could just change some of these options, start coming to the left a bit here. You could just leave a bit of the detail from that image in the picture, but blending wise it looks even worse than if you left it totally black and white. So personally I prefer to have the cabin in the full black and white image, black image, and just having the windows coloured. But I just want to show to you that you can sort of tinker with some of the settings once you've got to the end and you've saved everything, so you could then go a bit further and do a little bit of tinkering. And also, like I said at the beginning, there are people who are really good at doing composite images, and they're probably laughing their socks off at how bad and basic my blending and options have been. But I was just trying to adapt a Photoshop tutorial as best I could and to the best of my abilities, and this is the finished result. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.